What if your morning coffee could grow your dinner? Used coffee grounds are one of the best and most beginner-friendly materials on earth for growing oyster mushrooms, and most people throw them straight in the trash. In this guide, I will show you how to turn a free, endless waste stream into fresh gourmet mushrooms on your kitchen counter. Coffee grounds are nutritious, they are already partly sterilized by the brewing process, and oyster mushrooms absolutely love them. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how to collect your grounds, prepare them, add your mushroom spawn, and fruit a healthy harvest, plus the one mistake that ruins most coffee ground grows so you can avoid it from the start. It is cheap, it is sustainable, and it is genuinely one of the most satisfying first grows you can do. Let us get into it. Let us understand why this works, because it explains every step that follows. When you brew coffee, hot water passes through the grounds, and that brewing process does two helpful things at once. It pulls out some of the compounds that would otherwise feed competitors, and it briefly pasteurizes the grounds with heat, knocking back many of the molds and bacteria that fight your mushrooms. On top of that, spent coffee grounds are rich in nitrogen and nutrients, which oyster mushrooms feast on, and they come pre-ground to a perfect texture for mycelium to spread through. So in one free throwaway material, you get nutrition, a head start on cleanliness, and ideal structure. That is a rare combination, and it is exactly why coffee grounds are a favorite of urban and apartment growers who want a simple, low-cost, low-equipment way to grow real gourmet mushrooms. Here's the catch that ruins most coffee ground grows, and if you remember nothing else, remember this. Coffee grounds are only briefly pasteurized, and they are extremely nutritious, which means that if you give contaminants any opening, they will explode just as happily as your mushrooms. The two rules that solve this are freshness and ratio. First, freshness. You must use grounds within about 24 hours of brewing, while they're still effectively clean. Old grounds sitting around for days will already be growing their own green mold before you ever add spawn. Second, ratio. Pure coffee grounds can pack down too densely and hold too much water, so the reliable approach is to mix them with a structural material like pasteurized straw or shredded cardboard. Fresh grounds plus structure plus plenty of spawn is the recipe that consistently beats contamination. Your shopping list here is refreshingly short and cheap. 1. Used coffee grounds, collected fresh, which you can get free from your own kitchen or by asking any local cafe, since most are thrilled to give away buckets of it. 2. Oyster mushroom grain spawn, ordered from a reputable supplier, the living culture that does the work. 3. A structural additive, either some pasteurized straw or plain shredded cardboard, to keep the grounds from compacting. 4. A container with a few small holes for airflow, like a clean takeout tub, a bucket, or a grow bag. 5. A spray bottle for misting, and some isopropyl alcohol to clean your hands and surfaces. That is it. For just the cost of a bag of spawn, you can turn an endless free waste stream into pounds of fresh oyster mushrooms. The first step is collection, and timing is everything. You want your grounds as fresh as possible, ideally used within a day of brewing. If you drink coffee daily, simply save each batch in a sealed container in the fridge, which slows down any contaminants while you accumulate enough volume. If you want a bigger batch faster, ask a local coffee shop. Many will happily hand you several pounds at once, but ask for their freshest and use it the same day. You will need enough grounds to roughly fill your chosen container. Keep everything as clean as you can during collection, with a closed container and clean hands, because every bit of cleanliness now pays off later. Fresh, cool, clean grounds are the foundation of a successful coffee ground grow, so do not cut corners on this simple first step. Now we fix the density problem. Pure coffee grounds tend to compact into a dense, airless, soggy mass, and mycelium needs oxygen pockets to breathe and spread. The solution is to blend in a structural material. The two easiest options are pasteurized straw, prepared by soaking it in hot water around 160 to 175 degrees Fahrenheit for an hour, or plain shredded cardboard that you have soaked in hot water and wrung out. Aim for a mix of roughly 2 parts coffee grounds to 1 part structure. Then check your moisture with the squeeze test. A hard squeeze of the combined mix should release only a few drops of water, not a stream. If it is dripping, your mushrooms will drown. Coffee grounds hold a lot of water, so this is a common place to overshoot Light, airy, and just moist is the target. Time to introduce the living culture, and cleanliness matters most right here. Wipe your surfaces in your container with isopropyl alcohol. Wash your hands and arms and shut off fans and windows so no dust drifts through the air. With coffee grounds, you want to use a generous amount of spawn, around 1 part spawn to 4 or 5 parts substrate, because a heavy dose lets the mushroom mycelium colonize fast and outrun any contaminants in this nutrient-rich material. Crumble the grain spawn and mix it thoroughly and evenly through your coffee and structure blend. Then gently pack it into your container without crushing out all the air. Put the lid on loosely or close the bag with a small filter. That is your crop planted. From here, the mycelium does the work, and your job becomes patience and observation. Now the mycelium spreads through the coffee grounds, and your job is to wait and watch. Place your container somewhere out of direct sunlight at normal room temperature, ideally in the low 70s Fahrenheit. Over the next 1 to 3 weeks, you will see white, web-like mycelium thread its way through the dark grounds until the whole mass turns from brown to white. Oysters are fast, so coffee ground grows often colonize quickly. Resist the urge to keep opening the container, since each peak invites contamination and dries the surface. Watch for the signs of health versus trouble. Healthy mycelium is bright white and smells pleasantly of fresh mushrooms or coffee. But because coffee grounds are so rich, keep an especially close eye out for green, black, or fuzzy patches with a sour or rotten smell, which mean contamination has won and that batch should be discarded. Once your substrate is mostly white, it is time to trigger mushrooms. Oyster mushrooms fruit when their conditions change, so we give them 3 signals. First, fresh air. Open or add holes and fan the container a few times a day, because stale carbon dioxide gives you long, leggy, deformed stems instead of nice caps. Second, light. Move it somewhere with indirect natural light, which is a signal rather than food, so a normal room near a window is perfect. Third, humidity. Mist the inside walls and the air around the substrate a couple of times a day, keeping things humid without soaking the baby mushrooms directly. Within just a few days of changing the conditions, you should see tiny pins appear, the beginnings of your mushroom clusters, and from there, oysters grow remarkably fast. Harvest day is the payoff. Your oyster cluster will balloon in size over just a couple of days once it gets going, sometimes nearly doubling daily, so watch it closely now. The ideal moment to harvest is just before the caps fully flatten out, while their edges are still curled slightly downward. Wait too long, and the caps flatten, turn upward, and release a dusty rain of spores that shortens shelf life and makes a mess. To harvest, grip the entire cluster at its base and gently twist and pull it free all at once, rather than cutting individual stems, which leaves less behind to rot. Harvest in the morning when the mushrooms are firm, then brush them clean, store them unwashed in a paper bag in the fridge for up to a week, and enjoy them seared in butter. Because coffee grounds are the most contamination-prone substrate for beginners, let me give you a quick troubleshooting guide. If you see green mold, your grounds were probably too old, too wet, or underspawned. Next time, use fresher grounds, more spawn, and more structural material. If your mycelium is barely spreading and the surface looks dry, your mix was too dry or too compacted, so add a little moisture and more cardboard for air next time. If everything turns to sour-smelling slime, that is bacteria from too much water. So squeeze your substrate dryer before packing. And if your mushrooms grow long and stringy with tiny caps, that is too little fresh air. So increase your fanning. Every one of these problems traces back to the same few levers: freshness, moisture, spawn rate, structure, and air. Adjust those and your next batch will reward you. Let us bring it all together. Collect fresh used coffee grounds within a day of brewing. Mix in pasteurized straw or cardboard for structure, and check the moisture with the squeeze test. Add a generous helping of oyster spawn with clean hands and let it colonize to white. Then trigger fruiting with fresh air, indirect light, and humidity. Watch the pins balloon into clusters and harvest just before the caps flatten. You have just turned a free waste product into fresh gourmet mushrooms, which is about as satisfying as growing gets. If you want our complete playbook, with recipes for every substrate and species plus troubleshooting charts, It is linked in the description. Subscribe and grow along with us. Save those grounds tomorrow morning and start your first coffee ground batch this week.